Trying to see what I have in the background, actually.
Phew.
All right, looks like we have some people joining us. That's great. We'll be starting soon.
This chair does have a height adjustment. Okay.
Everybody well this morning?
Yeah, doing great. How are you, Dwayne?
Outstanding.
Great.
Yeah, it's a Wednesday and a lot going on in the world.
Certainly is.
It is, yeah.
So we're gonna give it a couple more minutes. I realize that you know, time is tight, but I want to make sure people have the chance to get from their last session into this one. So let's wait just a few more minutes with everybody. Welcome to those joining. As I said, we'll start in just a couple minutes. Give people some time to get from their last session. Right. Come a couple more. All right. And I'm going to wait one more minute and then we'll get started. I know there's a tight time schedule with the Georgia Bio event, but I also know it takes time to move from one event to another. So I want to give people that opportunity. All right. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm sure we'll probably get a few more people joining, but in the interest of time and in respect of everybody's time, let's go ahead and get started. So this session is about staffing and talent planning. Right? The title is building the team to hit each milestone. So building your team. The topic is relevant in our industry because we know that there are challenges with getting enough people, getting the right people for the various roles to accomplish your objective. And in one sense, it's not uncommon for folks to just, try to capture people at, in a kind of a rapid succession of building out their team as fast as they can because they're on a timeline, and they're trying to accomplish a mission. Sometimes you don't necessarily plan that out as well as you could, right? We've seen that a number of places in the industry, and we all think that there's a better approach that could be taken. So that's kind of the purpose behind this. This is a panel discussion. It's not a lecture or a presentation, so you won't see any slides, but we do have some questions that we'd like to ask our panelists. So let's start by what I'd like to do. My name is Harry Benson with CAI, and my focus is human performance for the industry. I'd like to introduce or give each of our panelists 30 seconds to introduce themselves briefly before we get started. So Dwayne Soyson, would you like to speak first?
Great. Thanks, Harry. Good morning to everyone. Really looking forward to the time here today. I am a member of the Dendreon Pharmaceuticals team here. We have a facility in Union City, Georgia, and we are very proud to be the manufacturers of an immunotherapy for the treatment of prostate cancer. We've been here for 10 years and look to and have lived a lot of the challenges I think that many of you may be working through today or looking forward to tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to share with you this morning.
Thank you, Dwayne. All right, Niru Kankari, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, yeah. So my name is Nedu Kinkri, and I'm with Alcon here at Johns Creek, Georgia. We are a medical device manufacturer. We make contact lenses, and at this particular site, and our mission is to enable people to see brilliantly. And my role here is manufacturing science and technology, which encompasses a few things from process engineering and chemistry to validation and a few other things. And I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you, Niru. Jeff Hall, please.
My name is Jeff Hall. I've been in the industry since 2001. I currently work with Harry at CAI and Human Performance as Associate Director. I've had major roles and everything from a director, facilities director, global operations, to senior management positions in training and development and other major pharmaceutical companies. Looking forward to hearing your questions today.
All right, thank you. So, and we have a dynamic panel. This is great. We have, represented, facilities and global ops. We have Vice President of Operations and Dwayne, and then Niru is head of MS&T. So I think we have a nice cross section of folks that that can help contribute to this. So I'd like to start with first an introductory question regarding talent. And Dwayne, I'd like to start with you. Maybe you could describe your approach to talent planning and how it supports your overall objectives.
So talent planning, right? That two simple words, but I think but very important words in the essence of really taking care of our most important resource, and that's the people within our organization. I want to start by emphasizing that talent planning isn't about any one particular tool. It's not a 9-box grid. It's not about, colorful charts or anything like that. They're necessary, they help. But the reality of it is that talent planning is really about the energy of your leaders and the commitment that they're able to provide each and every day to developing your people, our people, to achieve the heights that they never thought possible. But the practical element to that is, right, when you're talking about talent planning, is it really begins with understanding what is the challenge, and it's bigger than the objective, right? It's really what's the challenge that the organization is facing. What are you looking? What's the vision? What's the North Star? And what do we want to accomplish? And then with that, you have to identify key positions, and then identify who your key players are. And this is where you can start leveraging some different tools in terms of development plans and whatnot, understanding the gaps that may exist with any individual or within the organization. And then you build those plans out. I'm a firm believer that development plans are owned by employees, but supported by their leaders, right? Individuals have to really take that ownership. So when you think about talent planning, it is really about the energy and the commitment that leaders provide in doing so. And when you have the right leaders, and leaders aren't just folks that have a manager title, right? That's not how I look at that, right? Leaders are the individuals themselves and the ownership and the motivation that they have to possess, to drive, to improve, and fill their potential, and apply that potential, for the benefit of your customers, your patients, whomever that is. And that's really our objective. That's really to maximize the human potential within the organization. That's where talent planning comes in and really helping to support that.
Yeah, thanks, Dwayne. I like that. Wow, I couldn't. I'm not even going to try to summarize that. That was spot on as far as I'm concerned. Niru, how does that relate to your approach to your talent plan for your objectives?
Right. So I certainly agree with everything that Dwayne said. From our site's perspective, we are a 24/7 operation, and we move with velocity, really. So it's important that anyone we hire understands our priorities, side priorities, that, we're safety first, we're quality always, performance driven, and that our culture is very, very important. That, how the team operates interpersonally to deliver our results, that's key. So, one of the introductory, the description of this session was, is it enough to hire smart, experienced people? Is that just not that is an easy thing to do, but is that sufficient? And my perspective is that's sort of one part of the equation or the formula, if you will. There are other parts to it, how the team works together to have a sort of a shared reality, to agree and coalesce around the goals and decide how they will work towards them. That goes beyond not necessarily, not only the smartness and the experience, but the willingness to commit and put the energy behind achieving those goals. That's really important. And the other piece of it is, I think, learning agility is something that I value a lot. Tremendous experience is helpful, but also the willingness to take on new challenges, to get into new areas, to understand, to expand your breadth. That's pretty valuable as well. And I agree with Dwayne completely that personal development plans are owned by the employees and are supported by the managers. That's I think pretty key. But it's also, I think, incumbent on us to look for opportunities for talented personnel, keep them challenged. And, we spend an awful amount of time at work, right? We spend a tremendous amount of time at work. It should be fun. And what makes it fun is the people you work with and the challenges that you're asked to pick up and the satisfaction of delivering on those things. So if we're able to create that atmosphere for our associates, I think that helps to both attract as well as retain talent.
Yeah. Yeah, I like some of the items you said there. Really relates, I can see from both of you, to retention, which can always be, because you're definitely swimming upstream in your talent plan if you have significant turnover, right? I like those answers. Jeff, what are your thoughts on the approach to talent planning as it supports business objectives?
Well, I agree with what both of you said. I mean, that all makes perfect sense. One of my recent experiences was with hiring a team for basically a startup and a growing organization. The huge part of that was making sure they're a good cultural fit. Because while they may have the skills and subject matter expertise and experience, I found that through my 20 plus years in the industry that if they're not a right fit for the organization, they don't have the cultural ideas and are able to work with their fellow staff members, that often it doesn't work out for them or the organization. So yeah, they definitely have to have their own performance plans. They own them. You have to hire the right people with the right skills, but they also have to be a really good cultural fit as well.
Yeah. So Jeff, we'll come back to you again. Maybe you can get a little more specific about the steps that you take when building a team for a new venture, if you will, either a new business or an expansion of the business, or a new department or what have you. How do you approach that?
I mean, that's obviously at that point you've probably already had that conversation. You should have already had the conversation about what does the overall plan look like? What's the plan to get from startup to execution? And within that, how are you going to phase in your staffing for that plan? Look at, you need to hire, in my opinion, you should be looking at your senior management, your managers, and maybe even some of your more critical supervisors that you want to hire first. Because those are the people who are going to bring in the people that they feel like are experts to take over the roles as system owners and subject matter experts. To fill some of the other roles, I mean, it typically starts out as a contract type approach. You hire experienced contractors, which does a couple things for you. It gives you a chance to to vet some of those people potentially for future hires. And it also allows you to bring in some expertise from other areas of the industry that can help you guys get up to operations as quick as possible from a startup perspective.
Okay. So those experts, either in-house or out or contracted, that would kind of set the stage for what the roles require.
Mhm. Yeah. Obviously, you have to look at job descriptions and make sure you write adequate job descriptions and you're filling them per those job descriptions. But you need to identify what those critical roles are that you need to hire first,
Yeah.
depending on your goals and objectives from your plan.
Nero, do you have any additions to that or different approaches as far as the actual building of the team?
It's probably similar, but I think it also depends to some extent, and Jeff touched on this, on the situation at hand. So if you're looking to build a team rapidly for a site expansion, for instance, that might be a little bit different from building a team to look into a technical problem that is not quite at the point where you can implement. There might be a more R&D element to it. So that's a somewhat of a different approach. But it all comes down to, for a site expansion, for instance, the project management aspect of it may be more important at the start, to have the right project head and the right support from a project delineation and management standpoint, lay out the work streams, and then allow those work stream leads to get the right skill set for their own teams. Whereas, for a more technical project, you might go straight for an SME. They might be the most critical person for that project. So I think it does vary. And depending on the role, the contract to permanent path may or may not be feasible. It just depends.
Yeah.
Certain areas it's easier to do. It certainly allows you the possibility to gain some experience, but both ways. The organization with the person and the person with the organization. But a lot of the time, that's depending on the role, it's not possible. So then, it comes down to maybe being pretty clear about your strategic approach to that role and good job descriptions, and also I think getting sufficient input from others that you rely on others' judgment and not just your own, so that you look at it from all different a bunch of different points of view, so that making that decision is a pretty important thing. Hiring a permanent employee is a pretty big decision.
It is, isn't it? It's a good point. Dwayne, do you have anything to add to your approach?
I do, and I think I'm aligned with kind of the details that have been shared by both Jeff and Niru. A couple of things I would highlight. One is I'm perfectly aligned with Jeff's recommendation of leveraging contract resources where you can. I think that what's critical in this, I'm going to be use the word critical a couple times, is in really understanding what are those critical skills that you need to have. And you never settle then, right? I think the hardest part in any of this is when you're trying to build an organization and a team, and you mentioned it earlier, Harry, is that you feel overwhelmed and like, we got to get going, we got to get people here. You cannot allow that to be your determining factor or influence your decision making, because it is, as Niru pointed out, it is a very critical decision, one of the more critical decisions that you'll make as a leader in an organization. And so when you've identified those critical positions, you've got to be willing to stay the course, even if that means, again, bringing in some from the outside to support you while you look and continue to find that computer system validation expert or whatever it is, right? There are going to be technical skills that you need and you cannot settle. On a more fundamental basis, though, I aspire more towards also to the perspective of that we hire for attitude and train for skill. In a lot of positions, you can do that, right? And that is what's going to really be important in ensuring that the culture that you want to create is built with the people that can do that. And that's where the attitude comes in. That's a hard thing to determine in an interview process. I fully appreciate that. But that's why, as Neera mentioned, you can't do this on your own. And you've really got to employ the resources, the team members that are going to be actually working with these individuals. They've got to be a part of the process as well, right? You have to skill them up on how to conduct interviews and how to make those assessments so that they can provide a unique lens into the overall 360 world that we want to maintain and leverage in making decisions of this type. So, it's attitude, critical skills never settle. And so don't allow, time to be a reason for making, brash decisions that you potentially could regret later on.
Yeah, no, that's a good summary. Thank you. Peg, each of you went down the path of, the right cultural fit, attitude, finding the right characteristics, getting different perspectives. I'm kind of curious, do you have any best practices that you could share with the attendees? And I mean, it's one thing to evaluate someone's technical skills, and you have those hopefully clearly delineated in your job description, and your process flows clarify exactly what you need that person to do. Mm-hmm. The question is, how do you find, what do you use? What tools or methods do you use to verify that they do have the attitude or the cultural fit? They have the perspective that's going to succeed and stay with your organization. Any thoughts? I'll leave that open to, I don't mean to leave it too open, but who would like to tackle that one? Anyone?
So first, today's world's different than it was 10 years ago when you were hiring. Years ago, the focus was more technical and more experience-based, and you had people from a single organization who would interview people. A good practice that I've seen that really worked for me at the last company I worked with was having a panel interview, maybe one-on-one, maybe it was a full panel, but it was diverse, and it included people from the people side of the business, human resources. That's what they do. It had the technical component, but it had people from other organizations. So both Mary and Dwayne alluded to it. It's not just my organization that's hiring. It's you bringing in people from other organizations that could look at it and say, hey, during the interview, I noticed this. But it's more that panel approach.
Okay.
I think another element that we may not leverage enough, and companies really, I think, need to invest in development of a program if it doesn't exist, and that's a referral program. If you think about the fact that if you have individuals that you've been working with for a period of time, and you really appreciate their attitude and their approach, they're likely to know people that are like them, right? It's the attraction that takes place, and leveraging and creating a referral program to where they're able to recommend someone, and say, hey, I know Joe over here. I've known him for 10 years. Right? We've raised kids together, right? All the good stuff, right? I know what he's made of, and I know that I feel like he'd be a good fit for our culture. May not have the experience, but I think that's an important piece, right? That's where the engagement and involvement of the current workforce is extremely helpful. But that's only going to happen if you create an environment where your employees are engaged and understand the opportunity and responsibility that they share in that. Because in the end, they're going to be bumping elbows with someone next to them. It should be in their best interest to make sure that person that's bumping elbows with them, they can get along with, and the values that they possess are similar to what we want to instill within the organization.
Yeah.
And I think to add to that, we in today's world, referrals are somewhat easier to get maybe than they were 20 years ago. With social media and LinkedIn and all of these things, it's possible to go a couple of layers away from your immediate circle, perhaps, to get some of those references. And I agree, that's generally the better way to go about versus completely cold for hiring. One other thing that I have found helpful, at least in in my area, is when we do bring in external candidates, I often ask them to give a talk on a topic of their choice. And that allows me to assess a few things. It allows me to, if I'm looking for technical depth, then I can assess that for sure. I can also assess whether they're able to connect the dots. Are you able to tell a story? And the third piece of it is, what the energy, the sort of the
Kind of the attitude side of things.
attitude, the sort of the depth that they get into their projects. How proud are you of what you've done, and how far you've gotten? The fire that they bring.
Right.
So those, it's been helpful, at least for me, to use that as a tool to assess.
Yeah, I like that. For years, that's when I looked at hiring. I would do the same. Choose a topic that you're very comfortable with technically, and it could be something completely unrelated from the job we're interviewing for, and have them present the topic to me as a novice in that area or whatever, and see how they do it, how their logic strings, their, like you said, the fire. I love that term. And that does tell you a lot about how they would fit in the organization, I think, and the logic they might follow and the approach they might follow should they need to be having to work with others and explain things. That's good. I like that. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit and go into how you strengthen the employees' individual and team performance. Do you have methods or of strengthening and improving individual and team performance, and that might include their job satisfaction, right, and their performance management? Dwayne, let's start with you if you don't mind.
Sure. There's obviously an important role that scorecards play in, right? I think that having the ability to clearly define expectations and objectives and be able to measure them is important. So there are things like that again provide visibility to overall performance. Typically more so for team than individual, but the more you can do for the individual, the better, right? Because again, that's helping the individual understand the pulse that they have, on a day in and day out basis. But what I've found to be the most impactful are the soft skills that leaders need to possess in order to really kind of provide the motivation and the inspiration to drive performance, engagement within the team. And so, and I'm speaking from the perspective that, where we are today as a company, as a site here, it's a continuous improvement process. And that's the mindset we all have to have, is that should never be content with feeling like we are where we are and we don't need to do any better. But we got to build the skills over time that aren't necessarily taught, right? So we invest in things like feedback, right? How do we demonstrate candor with care, right? So that people know that when we're providing feedback, it's because we really want them to be better and not to be taken any other way. And so if you have that perspective and that mindset and people are receiving it that way, then they're more prone, more apt to take action to it. And that's where there's a lot of things that have to go into creating that, but that feedback piece is one. And then the other is we can't forget about recognition, right, and appreciation. Now, we tend to use those words interchangeably, and I've come to figure out that, and you can look online, right? There is a distinct difference. Recognition is kind of that I'm acknowledging you, Harry, for having accomplished something, for performance of X, whatever that task was. It was an important piece, to the overall success, versus the appreciation of really helping people understand their value, right? Their inherent value. And when you're able to do that, when people understand the value and what we see in them and help them appreciate what we see in them and what we need from them, it's unlimited in terms of what that can do to overall performance, and really trying to drive a culture to where, feedback isn't about from a leader to a direct report. It's peer to peer, right?
Yeah.
And that's the greatest piece of really demonstrating care for us. We strive to really focus on the fact that you have to take care of yourself in order to take care of others, in order to then take care of your patients or your customers, right? And it's in that order, right, that really has to happen. And part of taking care of one another is having enough courage to speak with candor and provide feedback, when it's, at all times.
Yeah. You've alluded a couple times to, appreciation of someone's value, and even in the scorecard side from a team standpoint and so forth. Both of those require clarity of purpose for the organization, and then for the department and the individual team and the individual, right? They need to be clear on their purpose. And I just like to make that point. That's something I am very passionate about, because if you look back at, look at, I don't know, FDA observations, for instance, where human error played a part. Often lack of clarity is one of the core issues, right? There was not clarity on the task, or clarity on the process, or clarity on, what my job is, or what to do under unusual circumstances, those kinds of things. All of that plays into part, clarity from the organizational goals all the way down to what my role is and where my value is. So then you have something to measure against the value of that individual. Wow, we appreciate your value because here it is. It maps directly to our mission, right? So yeah, I like that. That's good.
And there's one other thing I could add to that as well, and that is, don't underestimate as a leader the value that you bring by being out walking around and just talking to your employees and demonstrating that appreciation day in and day out, right? Most people aren't looking for that monetary reward. They just want to know that if I've done my job and I've done it well, that there is a true appreciation for it, so that when I come back the next day, I'm ready to go again, right? And that attitude is going to drive performance and make it, again, as I mentioned before, limitless in terms of overall success.
Yeah, that's a great point. Neera, I see you shaking your head on that, nodding your head on that subject. What are your thoughts on the subject?
No, I believe very strongly in a number of things that Dwayne just mentioned. Yes, performance evaluations, we do all those things. We set goals, we do, from mid-year or end of year and all of that. But I think it's also pretty important to provide feedback on an ongoing basis. And human nature being what it is, I think we all err on the side of where we'll provide the negative feedback, or let's say constructive feedback, but don't always, yes, we don't always say, hey, you did a great job on that, or you came in on that weekend and you didn't have to, you did it without being asked to do that, and it was fantastic. Or this little thing that you did that you just kind of did it because you thought it was a good idea, it had this impact.
Yeah.
And that makes people feel more empowered, I think. It also helps them connect the dots and not feel like a cog in the machine, that
Right.
their work and the value that they bring is key to our organization's success.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I also agree completely that, monetary rewards, while nice, are not everything. That feedback, the pat on the back, the take the team out to lunch. A little harder now with the pandemic, but the interpersonal interaction is very key. Definitely, walking the hallways, having the few minutes conversations with people, I think that's very important too. It's not only is it good for the team, but it's really good for me as a leader.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. Jeff, what are your thoughts? Anything to add?
I think you both hit it right on the head. Feedback is a gift, and that feedback ranges from thanking people on a daily basis for doing their job, recognizing them for something special that they did really well, recognizing the team for something they did really well. And it's important that it's timely, right? If somebody did a great job in February, and you're not going to recognize them until the end of March, there's a lot lost during that time period, a lot of things that happen. And Dwayne, I think you're spot on. You got to be on the floor with people. You absolutely have to be out there talking to people every day, asking them how they're doing, checking on their, not just work life, but their home life. Is everything going okay, and what the impact is there? So yeah, feedback is a gift.
That's good. I think we'll maybe have time for one more question on my end, and then see what questions we have from the audience. We do have a couple chats in, so I want to make sure we get to those and see if anybody else has anything they want to chime in. So this one is what I believe to be one of the biggest challenges of our time and in the industry, and maybe it's a juxtaposition of the two. I'm not sure, but in my observation, it's not uncommon for the norm to feel like firefighting day to day, and that's a big problem, right? I'll just leave it at that. We can describe it in a lot of ways, but it's a problem, right? So as organizational leaders, what methods you found to overcome or mitigate the issue of this plate spinning that seems to be going on everywhere day to day with no end in sight? What are your thoughts? Let's start with Naru, if you don't mind.
Harry, you're right. Firefighting is, I think, a part of everybody's lives in whatever industry you might be in. And I don't know that we will ever get away from it 100%, but definitely there are things we can do to mitigate the effect of it, and also use it, I think, constructively. So when you do have that issue that crops up and that you have to react instantly, that absolutely has to be done. You put the mitigation in place, and typically in the nature of things, that is going to be a Band-Aid. But I think the key thing is to come back later and figure out, don't let it go with the Band-Aid or a series of Band-Aids. We got to come back and say, okay, what was the root cause? Take the time to really dig deep and figure out why it happened, how to measure it, and then how to put a root cause solution in place. And definitely, there are, for instance, you have a raw material issue, right? The immediate mitigation might be to find another lot or an equivalent thing you can use. But then the root cause is, okay, why did that thing fail? And how do you assess when it's going to happen the next time? What do you put in place to prevent it from happening? And what was the root cause on your supplier's end that caused it? There are tools we can use. There's FMEAs. There are things we can do to be more proactive about risk management,
right?
So that we're not eternally in firefighting mode, right? The FMEAs, the data analysis, the continuous process monitoring, all of these things we have excellent tools that we can use. And the more we use them and the more process we put around them, the less we end up in firefighting mode and the more proactive we get in assessing and managing risk.
Yeah, that's good. And using the tools is a discipline unto itself, right?
It's a discipline unto itself, and definitely some education may be needed to help people understand the value of these things.
Yeah.
But no one wants to be in firefighting mode all the time. So if we can show that this actually helps, and it's not as exciting perhaps, and it can be a lot of sometimes tedious work to understand all the implications of various root causes and all of these things. But that exercise will really pay off.
Jeff, your thoughts on this?
Well, firefighting can be detrimental not only to an organization, but it can be detrimental to the person in their job as well. Typically what you see with firefighting, right, is if you're in firefighting mode all day long, you're not doing your job. And when do you actually do your job? Well, after the day's over, and that takes a toll on people. My experience with that is, like you said, there's a lot of tools out there that can be used to help, mitigate that or assess it after it's occurred. But one of the biggest tools that you can use is planning and looking ahead. And making sure you take into consideration all the different scenarios, and then the risk assessment. How do you address that? And which ones will be the most impactful? But yeah, firefighting, in my opinion, and I see a lot of it, can be very detrimental to a job role.
Yeah. Wayne, what are your thoughts?
So I'll start with a question. So if firefighting is the norm, is it really still firefighting?
That's a good question.
Fair
That's
point.
a good question.
Is it?
As usual, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I think the frame of reference that I would bring to the table in acknowledging that, yes, there are understanding and uncovering root cause and digging deep enough, leveraging the tools is always very, very important to helping us there. But, you know, I think we need to step back sometimes and really look at it from the perspective of, do we have the right systems in place? You know, what's creating this mode? But more importantly, I think that the opportunity in these situations is, as a leader, so Jeff, you mentioned it a little while ago, if I'm firefighting, then I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. Well, why is that? As a leader, the question should be, if these are the things that need to be done, how can I leverage it for the development of my people along the way? Because, you know, we've seen, I'm sure, majority of us, the perspective of the development of our people is more about on the job than it is at a seminar or through some mentoring relationship, right? 70% of that development should be occurring through your day-to-day experiences. So when those things are occurring, why are you as a leader doing it? Are you really depriving someone else from the opportunity to grow and learn from those elements as well? And so now that takes the true burden away from you. You're not looking to set someone up to fail, right? That's not what this is about, and pushing all the nasty work to others that you just don't want to do. That's not what that's about. It's more about leveraging the opportunity to say, you know what, if this is how things are going to be, or this is how it needs to run, then where can I leverage my team for their development in addressing and moving forward? And then looking at it from the perspective of, you know what, I don't want to keep doing this either. So how can I make it better, right? And now you've engaged the employees in the perspective of them trying to solve the problem in a way that mitigates the burden on them, right? So I think we can reshape our thinking as leaders a little bit and fine tune it such that we look at them as developmental opportunities. And that kind of links back to everything we've been talking about here over the last 35 or 40 minutes.
Yeah, I'd agree, Dwayne. I am a big advocate, as many are, in a structured continuous improvement program, right? You know, engaging, using, you know, the Kaizen type tools and others, if you're familiar with those. Not because I mean, partly because they work, right? I mean, there's a process to them and they're structured, but it's more importantly what each of you have alluded to, which is, you know, constructively leveraging, as you put it in your, leveraging that problem, so to speak, into a development opportunity, right? A good continuous improvement program engages the people, all the stakeholders, not just the person who's been tasked with solving it or the leader, right? And nobody knows the problem better than the people dealing with it, right? And the people that would deal with it, you know, that are in training or whatever, right? Bring them into the fold, let them be part of that solution, and in a structured way. And everybody learns, and the improvement, and you know, when done right, it actually mitigates or solves the problem as well. You know, you get 2 for 1 there.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if you're the leader and you're always going to solve the problem when it comes to a critical situation, how does that make your team feel? What value do they feel at that point? Are they just there every day to just take care of the, you know, the mundane things?
Right.
You're right. How are they going to develop? So it's important.
Yep. And that leads to worse things such as complacency, apathy, you know, I'm just punching my clock, you know, that kind of thing. And that's absolutely a spiral downward, right? So,
yeah,
good point. Well, I guess in the interest of time, you know, we have a few minutes left. I can, first of all, one attendee echoed what you know, kind of what you had said, Dwayne, hire for attitude, train for skill, right? Love that mantra. There's a question here for Dwayne first, and then the panel. When when bringing in other companies or organizations on the interview process, is there a concern for competition that for that potential candidate? I assume they mean, if you're hiring from, say, maybe I'm not quite clear on the question. It's, is there a concern for competition for that potential candidate? Maybe the attendee would like to embellish a little bit. I'm not sure I understand the question completely. Let's see. Well, what are your thoughts on the interview process? Is there a risk for competition for that? Maybe they mean within the organization, like who gets that person or whatever. Maybe that's the question.
My answer to that is, who cares then, right? If it's the right person for the company organization, you put them where they're going to be the best fit, right?
Okay.
I look at it. I think we all can leverage different sports analogies, and without a doubt, as a team, if you take baseball for example, we need pitchers, we need catchers, right? We need people who are going to play those roles for the most part day in and day out. But utility players, never underestimate the value of those who are very transferable from one place to the other, right? And the development that comes with that is huge, right? And the benefit that the employee is receiving, but also the company, you as a leader, is insurmountable, right? So I'm not worried. If you got the right person, I'm not worried about whether or not they're joining my team or their team. We're one team, right? And we need to be very mindful of the fact that and if we start worrying about that, you're going to quickly create silos that are going to be very, very difficult to break later on. And so I encourage you to look at it as you're building a team, and then you're going to decide collectively as leaders, where's the best place for them, within the organization to help you achieve not just your short-term, but your longer-term goals.
I like the point. If the leaders are aligned on the mission and everybody's rowing in the same direction, that breaks down those silos really quickly. And that is this problem is an example of siloing or
Exactly.
So that's a good point. And it's a great question too.
Yeah, absolutely great.
Niru, Jeff, anything to add to that, or
I guess maybe I interpreted the question slightly differently.
I did get confirmation that that's what she meant was, competition within the organization.
Within the company. Okay. So in that sense, yeah, I agree. The right strategic fit is what you have to go for. It doesn't, you don't do anyone any favors by treating it any other way. Mm-hmm. Now, the other aspect of this is if we are worried about, say, difficult to fill roles and there is competition from outside, for candidates, I'd still say take the time to hire the right person for the job. It's critical. Don't get rushed into making decisions that could have a big impact on the organization, right? Especially leadership roles.
Yeah, Dwayne mentioned that as well. That's good. We have just 2 minutes left. Is there anyone in the attendance that would like to ask another question? Either, verbally, you can unmute your mic and ask, or if you want to text it in or chat it in, that's fine. As we said in the write-up of the event, I mean, your people will likely become, if they are not already, your highest cost. Maybe you could argue your greatest risk to variability, and as Dwayne put it earlier, your biggest asset. So, the fact that some organizations often, kind of marginalize the person, the people part of the business, and for the sake of process and equipment and and regulatory needs and so forth, is a high risk as leaders, and we need to curb that. I think it's fair to say. What other questions do we have? 1 minute, maybe that's. Any final comments from the crew panel? Thoughts?
I appreciate everyone's attention and willingness to listen, participate. Obviously, I think our contact information's out there as a part of the summit, if you will. So if there's other questions that you need to ask of us, please don't hesitate to email us and go from there.
Okay.
Which,
Oh, we did just get a question in. Thank you. And I'll just put this out there. What strategies do you use to write job ads to hire the people you want? And I think that's along the lines of job descriptions, which I don't want to confuse the two because they have different purposes, but they should be, married in their purpose or in their content at least. I think we're out of time. It's a great question. I wish we had more time to talk about it. Maybe that's a good question for, as Dwayne said, everybody has, our bios are on the invite or on the Georgia Bio event page. Feel free to contact any or all of us with that question. Any others, that would be great.
I think if I could jump in 15 seconds,
Please.
I think the way I would look at this is you need to create the ads in a manner that attract people to your vision and your mission. It's not about the specifics of the job always, but if you can align and intrigue and create some intrigue, and then they can come and explore on their own, they're going to be the ones that you want. Instead of them looking for a job title per se, it's about, can they rally around your mission and purpose? And then, so if you create the ads that way, I think that goes a long way to helping you attract the right people.
Yeah. Jeff, Niru, any other comment on that?
No,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'd also say that it's probably pretty important to be quite clear about what you're looking for, so as not to confuse the candidates who might be applying. If you're looking for a chemist, you kind of need to say that.
Yeah.
Rather than you can't keep it so general. While I'm really a fan of the idea that smart people can learn pretty much anything, there are certain skill sets that are necessary. So clarity, I think, is pretty key. And if there are certain things that you think are absolutely essential, then say that. It just saves time in the long run, and it provides clarity to the whole thing. And while I have the floor for a second, I just want to thank everybody. Thank you all for the opportunity to participate. Really enjoyed it. And as I said, feel free to reach out, or if you have any other questions, glad to answer them. And thank you all for listening to us today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nir. Jeff, any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, again, appreciate being part of the panel and answering some of your questions. The last two questions, keep in mind, critical skills are part of what's important when writing a job description. And as far as hiring a person within the organization, if they don't turn out to be a good fit for your part of the organization, doesn't mean that they don't fit another role in the organization. So don't let that talent get away.
Yeah. So Kristen was kind enough, Georgia Bio, to point out that on Friday at 11 o'clock, there's a session surrounding experiential concepts to add to the workforce, right? It'll discuss apprenticeships, internships, and fellowships. So kind of fits into the culture discussion we've had and so forth. So again, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time, and I want to thank our panelists, Dwayne, Nimru, Jeff. I appreciate your input. It's insightful, and hope everybody has a good session here at Georgia Bio. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.